The world saw him as the calm before the dawn, composed, royal, radiant. Yet, deep within the walls of his heart, a tempest roared that no crown could silence. Sheikh Hamdan, the poet prince of Dubai, had always been a man of both light and shadow. His words could heal nations, but his silence could break hearts. And among those hearts, there was one he could never forget, the one who once called him her peace. She was serenity in human form, the quiet to his chaos, the balance to his storm. But sometimes love, even when pure, becomes a battlefield where peace and passion can no longer coexist. She came into his life like a sunrise over the desert, gentle, golden, unstoppable. Her laughter softened the sharp edges of his duty. Her presence reminded him that even a prince deserved to be human. In her eyes, he found the calm he had been seeking since birth, a stillness that even the desert winds envied. With her, he wasn't Sheikh Hamdan, he was just Hamdan, a man capable of feeling deeply, of loving without calculation, of dreaming beyond thrones and titles. But love, when it grows too close to perfection, often meets its greatest test. He loved her fiercely, too fiercely, perhaps. Where she offered peace, he brought intensity. Where she whispered, he thundered. She would touch his hand and say, "You don't have to protect the world all the time. Just be." But he didn't know how. The same fire that made him a leader burned within his love. He wanted to shield her from everything, to hold her too close, to make her the center of his every poem. And in doing so, he became the very storm that unsettled her peace. It was never intentional, yet love does not always ask for intentions, only consequences. There were nights when they argued under the moonlight, her tears glistening like stars upon the sand. "You love like lightning," she told him once, "beautiful, but it strikes too hard." He stood there, unable to reply, because she was right. His love was too vast, too consuming. He didn't know how to love halfway. He loved in full storms, and she, delicate and kind, loved in gentle rain. Their worlds collided in beauty and tragedy, each trying to understand the other's rhythm but finding that sometimes love is not about how hard you hold on, but how softly you let go. After she left, the palace grew quieter. The same corridors that once echoed with laughter now carried only his footsteps. Every room reminded him of her presence. The scent of her perfume that still lingered, the memory of her hand brushing against his robe, the sound of her voice saying his name as if it were a prayer. He had written poems about love before, but now he began to write about loss. "She was my peace," he scribbled one night, "but I was her storm. And when peace meets a storm, the sky weeps for them both." The world never knew. To them, he was still the smiling prince, the poet of Dubai, the leader of dreams. But behind closed doors, he wrestled with memories that refused to fade. He would stand by the window on sleepless nights, watching the waves crash against the shore, and think, "That's me, always breaking what I love." He wanted to reach out to her, to tell her he had learned to be still, that the storm within him had softened. But some distances are not measured in miles. They are measured in pain, and hers was too deep to cross. In his poetry, she lived forever. Every verse carried her breath, every metaphor her memory. The world read his poems and felt love, only he knew they were confessions. "She was never a chapter," he once wrote. "She was the entire book, and I lost the pages trying to keep her from closing." The irony of love is that sometimes we destroy the very thing we are trying to protect. He had wanted to guard her from the world, but in doing so, he became the world she needed to escape. He returned to the places they used to go, the stables, the garden, the quiet beaches where she would chase the waves barefoot, laughing like the wind. The sea had become their witness, and now it became his confessor. He whispered her name into the tide, and the waves answered with silence. It was a silence he understood, not absence, but ache. He knelt and touched the water, murmuring, "I hope you found the peace I couldn't give you." And the sea, infinite and kind, seemed to shimmer in response, carrying his words into forever.
There were days when the world demanded his light, but his heart still carried the echo of her absence. In public, he stood tall, the perfect embodiment of grace and leadership, but inside, he remained haunted by the quiet aftermath of their love. Some nights, when the wind howled against his windows, he imagined it was her voice carried through the desert, calling him home. He would close his eyes and listen, torn between the peace she once gave him and the storm he could never silence. Even after all these years, her memory was both his comfort and his punishment, a reminder that love, once lost, doesn't vanish, it transforms into something eternal. He often walked along the shore at twilight, where the sea kissed the sand in the same rhythm that once matched her heartbeat against his chest. The sunsets had begun to feel like conversations between them, his heart pouring out in color, hers answering in silence. The waves still remembered her name, he was certain of it. They whispered it in the soft pull of the tide, and every time, he smiled with tears glimmering in his eyes. "You were my calm," he murmured to the horizon, "but I had too much thunder inside me to let you rest." The ocean did not reply, but it didn't need to. It understood the language of broken love. Sometimes he reread the poems he had written for her, the ones never published, tucked away in his private journal. The ink had faded in places, smudged by the brush of time and tears. He ran his fingers over the pages like they were sacred relics of a life he could never return to. In those moments, he didn't feel like a prince or a poet, he felt like a man who had loved too much and lost too deeply. "Maybe love isn't supposed to last forever," he whispered once, closing the book softly, "maybe it's just meant to teach us what forever feels like." He knew she had moved on. He imagined her surrounded by laughter, by peace, by the kind of life she always deserved, one without storms. And though it hurt, it also gave him comfort. Because if love was truly love, it didn't envy, it blessed. He sent silent prayers for her happiness into the night sky, believing that some part of her still looked at the same stars. "Be free," he would whisper, "because I was never meant to keep you. I was only meant to love you enough to let you go." It was the hardest kind of love, the kind that doesn't end in holding on, but in surrender. The years taught him that peace is not found by chasing it, it finds you when you finally accept your storm. His heart had grown softer, wiser. The fire that once burned recklessly now glowed gently,